So Michael Edwards is back. Richard Hughes is impending at Liverpool Football Club as the next director of football. I sat down with Neil Jones to discuss some of the rumours around Edwards' departure, why he's being brought back in, his role, and of course Liverpool's potential director of football appointments as well. There's been a lot of rumours around like sort of destabilisation behind the scenes at Liverpool. A lot of it to do with the rise in power of Klopp and Pep Linders and what have you. Is there a little bit of this and almost giving Michael Edwards more power is almost, I think that's a bit of like almost an apology or a admission that maybe they wish they could have kept him round the first time?
Possibly. I would say it's probably more Liverpool realising, wow, one man, Klopp, like has the potential to that could pull all the Jenga pieces out, you know, and we sort of would rather not be in. Obviously, it'd be lovely to be in that position with the next manager because it would mean he's been really successful and really impactful. But do we probably need to think about sort of, you know, making sure that if possible, the club's just sort of in a position where whoever the manager is sort of not secondary because it's always going to be a massively important position, but isn't going to sort of leave us in a position where if they leave or if they fail, we have to start again and look at new sort of a completely new structure. So I don't know about the apology element to it because I think Michael, I never got the impression that he stormed out of Liverpool and that was it. You know, I'm finished. It was all both. Obviously, he done his open letter, but he explained that, you know, 10 years at the club was seen as a long time, and maybe it does sometimes just need a bit of time away and a refresh and maybe just a reminder that actually I quite enjoyed that and I liked being involved in an organisation like that. But I never got the impression that it was sort of like I asked for this and you let me go. Yeah, so and clearly he can't have been an acrimonious split, can he? Because he's back, you know, and he never went. He had opportunities to go to other clubs. You know, Chelsea I think was a big one that made a play for him. He was linked with Real Madrid at one point, wasn't he? I think Manchester United. So I think he could have come back into football clearly somewhere else, and the fact that he's done so at Liverpool suggests that relationship certainly wasn't too badly damaged when he left.
And the deal that he's being offered is obviously
exactly. Yeah, you know, it's not insignificant, is it? It's bigger. Head of football sort of operations. Maybe more than that. I mean, we'll see what the official title becomes.
Is there something here, just in terms of the approach for why Liverpool have gone about this? Because you mentioned that Jurgen Klopp is just so involved and so pivotal to so much of Liverpool. He's such a figurehead at the football club that, and rightly so, because he's earned that every step of the way. He didn't walk in there. It wasn't handed to him, and ultimately, when you hand that to someone, it never goes well. Didn't happen. You know, David Moyes was basically handed all the keys that Alex Ferguson had got on his belt loop by the time he left, and it weighed very, very heavily on him.
Yeah.
And you've seen that happen at other football clubs. Liverpool have made that mistake in the past. There's almost not a pathway on how to do it right, but Manchester United and Arsenal have demonstrated how to do it wrong.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and you even circle back to Fenway in letting Kenny Dalglish go and not digging their heels in on Brendan Rodgers and letting him have almost the say over the director of football role too much there. That destabilised the football club. This is now them going, right, it's much easier to get this wrong than it is to get it right. So, and actually by appointing Edwards, you've got a nice, you're steadying the ship, you've got someone who's actually brilliant at the job, and it means that it's harder to... You can get the manager wrong, but it's actually not going to be the end of the world if you get the manager wrong.
Yeah. I think also an acceptance that it's once in a generation, this kind of manager, isn't it? And Klopp, I mean, that you can't expect to replicate that and just go, well, the new manager, you know, he puts his own stamp on it, but he's gonna have the same responsibilities as Klopp, albeit in his own way. I also think it takes some of the heat off the next manager, and you know, in the sense of if you had a novice sporting director and a novice in the job manager, you'd be getting a lot of sort of flack about they've bought the wrong players, they've done that. At least it's sort of like, well, hang on, that structure's in place there, so we can focus on what the manager's actually doing, as opposed to, was that his player? Is that did he want that medical department set up? Why are people getting hamstring injuries? There's actually a bit of sort of clarity around, well, hang on, that's what Liverpool have put in place above the manager. Let's see what the manager. I would be intrigued, actually, funny enough, to see whether Liverpool confirm the next manager as a head coach.
Yeah,
and yes. I don't think they've ever had one. I don't think Brendan was a head coach. He was a manager, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. I wonder whether that might see that, because I always noticed that Arsenal, Mikel Arteta's a head coach. I think I don't know about Guardiola, but there's a few in the Premier League that are head coaches. And I've heard a few of them speak about that fact. No, that's my job. I'm a head coach. I wonder whether Liverpool might be a new thing that they have, where it's like, right, the football operations there, and there's your job there in terms of setting up the team and winning all our games. It
is. It's just a really interesting approach to that, because it means that it's a bit like you sell a world class player, you don't go and buy another like for like replacement, that sort of level. People always think that you do, but more often than not as well.
It is very rare.
You go and get more people around to kind of pick up the slack, and that's the thing. You don't want, that's a lot of stress and strain for anyone to come in and kind of like, because there's all the stuff that Jurgen Klopp will be doing that no one will really be aware that he's doing. You won't know until he's gone. So actually you mitigate against that by getting more and better around to some extent. And you're right, as much as, and we'll come on to Richard Hughes next, Fabrizio Romano reporting that he already has an agreement in place to join Liverpool for the end of the season.
I think that's pretty. I don't think he's quitting his job at Bournemouth on the off chance that the phone rings and Liverpool come. But he's been in his job for a long time, so he's had stability in his job, which I think is quite important. Liverpool have not just seen an impact, they've seen a sustained period. I know Bournemouth have had relegation, but generally Bournemouth have been a pretty good club, haven't they? You look at, probably punched above their weight at times, but played nice football. I think their recruitment's actually been quite good. You look at, I know we joke about them paying a lot of money for Liverpool players, but they've brought in some players that have gone on and had good sort of moves elsewhere. Think of Dan Juma was one that I think no one had heard of until Bournemouth got in. I suspect we might be talking about Utara at some point in the future as a player where you go, wow, where did he get him from? Tyrone Mings was one. Obviously Phil Billing. They've done well. They're a Premier League club, aren't they? And established, and they've had some managers pass through, obviously, that have gone on. Howe, obviously Eddie Howe was there for many years, but he's now moved up the ladder. Mm-hmm. Gary O'Neill's done a really good job since he's left Wolves. I think Iraiola's pretty well thought of in what he's doing. So there's more success there than failure, isn't it? But over a period of time, it's not a case of he came in and just swept through the club in one transfer window and got rid of the manager and brought in 28 new players. It's been a sort of, there's been planning, there's evidence of how they've planned and how they've made ruthless decisions. O'Neill, a lot of people would have said, give him the job last. Scott Parker was sacked, 2 weeks into the season. I mean, Liverpool made it easy for him to do that, but they've made tough decisions as well. So there's a lot of evidence as to how he works, isn't there, and sort of how he or what kind of processes they use. So I can't pretend to say, oh, well, that's the best appointment because Richard Hughes was on this metric or whatever, but I think Liverpool have got a fair bit of evidence of what they're appointing and sort of that he knows the Premier League, but also the game, if you like, the sport.
Well, let's talk what's next almost for Liverpool, because as much as Richard Hughes isn't confirmed yet, Michael Edwards is effectively. The job is there. There's talk. Obviously, talk about of Hughes taking over in the summer. The work will need to be getting done before then, because Liverpool have got contracts to renegotiate. There's transfers. Probably not quite as many transfers as we maybe would have thought last summer, given the rise of some of the players.
It's a very interesting one transfer wise. Obviously, a little bit depends on the contracts that you mentioned, but I'd be interested to know if you give everyone a blank sort of canvas and said, right, you've got X amount of money. where's your first sort of 50 million getting thrown? I think you get some different answers.
Yeah.
I think maybe some people would say, well, we need another midfielder. Some people say centre back. Maybe you'd say actually the forward area. Some would maybe say left back. You look at Robertson turning 30. There's a few, but it doesn't feel like any of them are sort of like flashing light. Sort of got to get that fixed. We might be speaking differently 2 weeks into next season, but at this moment it does feel like you can be a bit more selective in what you're doing recruitment wise, and it will be interesting to see what a new and old pair of eyes see about Liverpool's squad at the moment, especially with all the academy sort of prospects coming through. That it doesn't always work like this, but there is the prospect that Liverpool save themselves hundreds of millions of pounds with some of these players, with Conor Bradley, with Kwanzaa, with Bobby Clark, with Jayden Danns. There's a lot of real potential there of players that, okay, it might take them a year or two to really sort of bed in and become Curtis Jones or Trent or whoever, but I think it does make it a very interesting summer.
Yeah, and this is the reality of where Liverpool are at though now. Now this is done or being done, even if it's not being confirmed in public, it's clear there's clearly been things moving behind the scenes that most of us haven't been privy to, which does give you hope and confidence that things like contracts, things like transfers, and then ultimately the choice on who's going to be the next manager, that these were the big roadblocks to do that, because actually Liverpool couldn't announce any of those things before these things were announced.
Yeah.
Even if it was all technically done, because you end up into worlds of tapping up and all that kind of stuff. This doesn't mean that Xabi Alonso's getting announced in the coming days, you'd imagine, but it does follow because we've now got people who, well, they've got skin in the game, Neil, because they're actually their jobs are going to be dependent upon who takes the reins and how well they perform. Yeah,
absolutely. And there are some dots that you can connect and say, well, they won't be going for him because he's in place or he's not in place. I think at least with Michael Edwards, you can sort of say, well, if you see a link to a player, you can say, well, yeah, probably is a Liverpool kind of player, because that's how they're going to be operating, isn't it? They're not going to be, if you see Liverpool link with Joshua Kimmich, for example, or someone in the wrong side of 30, they're not going to do that, are they?
Hilariously linked with Manchester United, by the way, which is like, have they not learned any lessons over the last 15 years?
Just rinse and repeat.
But just on that though, because this is the thing as well, this is a competitive market. Yeah. This is like the striker transfer market 2 summers ago, where there's only so many really good ones floating around. Manchester United are in this process. Newcastle are therefore going to enter into a bit of this process as well if Ashworth moves there. Chelsea are doing the same. And Liverpool are already ahead of all of those football clubs, but it's very easy to not be. Yeah. And that's what, if this is boxed, it means that while the other clubs are still trying to box this, Liverpool get to move their attentions to what comes next.
Yeah, and they know there's big decisions as well, so it probably needs big people or a big person around there to gain a bit of the trust. Imagine Liverpool say in the summer, and I don't think it's beyond the realms, it's Salah to be sold. We're not going to give him a new contract, or we're going to cash in. Could happen. I think it's a lot easier for fans to sort of get behind that if it's Michael Edwards than if it's Tim Steidten or another coming in as sporting director. Even if it isn't necessarily solely their call, I don't for one second believe it won't be Richard Hughes' decision whether Liverpool keep Salah or not. Yeah. But I think it's a lot easier for people to get behind that, or if they start looking and people say, why are we not spending loads of money on this? I think again, it's more easy to understand when it's familiar people around there. But I wrote last pre-season, it's a fascinating pre-season. I think I said it's the most fascinating pre-season for years, and that was even before the Saudi Arabia wave arrived at Anfield.
Before Caicedo and Saudi Arabia tried
exactly,
to get
I just meant in a general, there was a lot of questions to be answered. I think you can add a little bit of extra onto that this season, this pre-season, there's Liverpool are in far better shape squad-wise and mood-wise, but they've got a manager going, his staff going, they've got new appointments to be made. And I think what they sort of do strategically with the squad I think it's going to be fascinating because I don't know what I would do. I have sort of half opinions on. I still think they probably do need another centre back. I do think maybe longer term, the fullback areas might be areas that they might need to sort of make some significant signings. I possibly think they're forward short generally, but they're not like ones that I go, well, that's definitely, I'm going to say that's definitely the answer. I think it'll be interesting to see what what a fresh pair of eyes thinks of it.
Hey, thank you so much for checking out the content today. If you want to get your name in and amongst these wonderful people, then head to redmenplus.com. Join as a Legend tier subscriber. You're going to get free merchandise codes. You're going to get in our Discord, and you're going to get your name at the end of YouTube videos. Yes, redmenplus.com, Legend tier status.